Hello, we are here with Alice Leake, the visionary creative force behind This Wild Soul. With a background in elite sports, Alice has channeled her passion for adventure into captivating works that celebrate nature and holistic living. Her art is exhibited in galleries across the UK and featured on products worldwide, inviting others to embrace life's wild and magical moments. Alice joins us to discuss creativity found in nature, harnessing flow state, and to share her joy of exploring life off the beaten path. Alice, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. That was such a beautiful introduction. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
It's a beautiful life, beautiful life. Uh, so, help us understand your journey from elite athlete to the wild soul life that you live now. Like, was there a trigger moment or was this more of an evolution?
So it was kind of a bit of bit of both. Basically, when I was a kid, I was always encouraged to go outside. So my mum she's very outdoorsy herself. So her favorite things to do are kind of go walking, take me to the beach, all this sort of stuff. She grew up very close to the beach when she was a kid, so she was always outdoors. So she really encouraged that. If I was at home and it was a sunny day, go outside and play, go and find someone to play with. So I had, all my friends when I was sort of primary school were boys. So I'd be out playing different games, learning different sports. If it was a rainy day on the odd occasion, I say in Britain. Okay, this is frequently. But we'd be watching Indiana Jones or things like that. We weren't, sitting there playing with Barbies, or I'm sure I had one or two somewhere. But this was kind of the situation. And then my dad would be taking me camping in the summer. So, that kind of, again, really made me love the outdoors. And my mum was very creative. So she would take me to the theatre and she would go to singing, we'd go to singing groups together and we'd be going to crafting workshops and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of, the two together was kind of, kind of dropped into me from a young age, if that makes sense. And then basically when I was at secondary school, we had a coach come round and he kind of tested everyone on the rowing machine if we wanted to try for the team.
Okay.
And yeah, so I think because I'd already been very sporty, I was quite strong and I was quite fit anyway. And also my mum had kind of given me swimming lessons because she was scared that my dad would, send me off in a lilo somewhere and I'd and all this sort of stuff. She was always worrying about things like this. So she got me swimming lessons. That gave me kind of a cardio base. So then I started doing that. And actually from a really young age, I started doing very well. So the first race that they entered me into was, the national championships indoors. And
oh, wow.
I can't remember how old I was, like 11 or 12 or something. And, I got a silver medal. Woo!
Oh,
so I was
nice.
it was like this exciting moment. And then it kind of hooked me because I was like, this is so cool. I want to be really good at this and I want to keep doing this. So I carried on while I was through school and did some really great things when I was at school and into university. I was captain, all that sort of stuff. But I didn't have time because I was focused so much on it. I really didn't have time for anything else. So, I really sacrifice the creative stuff. I didn't go traveling unless it was for sport. Sometimes I was racing abroad sometimes, and that, obviously was amazing in its own right. So all of this was incredible in its own right. But I felt when I left university, I actually sustained a back injury. And there was this moment where it was like, well, I can either spend, a year rehabbing this and then a year getting back to fitness.
Okay.
Or I can do the exciting things.
Okay.
That I hadn't let myself do for a long time because I've not, I never used to let myself go on holiday because I didn't want to let myself lose fitness because, even taking 2 or 3 days off felt scary that I was going to lose fitness. I mean, it's a bit of a crazy,
wow. Okay.
But you do kind of get into that mindset where it's, you give everything to it and you don't, you're worried about getting
injured. You don't want to distract anything from it.
Yeah. And also you're worried that you might get an injury. I wouldn't go skiing or I wouldn't do these things because what if I get injured and then I've wiped out my season? Does that make sense? Yeah. So that was a bit of a pivot point for me. And it was very, I'll be honest, it was a lot of my identity was wrapped up in rowing and being this, elite rower or whatever at the time. So it
Mhm.
was kind of this huge change for me. And I just really kind of thought, well, what's going to make me excited? What's going to get me excited and what sounds exciting? And I'd
So that
always,
was that unintended break that came.
yeah,
Like, I wasn't
yeah,
looking for it, but
yeah.
you're taking advantage of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So I auditioned for drama school in London, and I ended up doing an acting course for a year, which was wonderful. It was absolutely incredible. I loved it. And it really got me back into play mode because I think for a while I was so, streamlined and this is what I've got to do. I kind of forgot. I've always been playful, but I kind of forgot, just how imaginative and playful,
Lost in the
that makes
practice and the yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
wow.
And then from there, I kind of was dabbling in lots of different things and just, I did some theatre sets, I wrote a play, various things. And then what the really big pivot point for me though was probably I can't remember what year it was, but it was in my late 20s. And I was coaching at the same time. I forgot to mention that actually. So
Okay.
I was starting to coach. So
So
alongside
you
the
were
clinic,
engaged in this sport
yeah.
heavily yourself already, heavily invested, and you were coaching as well?
Yeah, so I
Oh,
started coaching. So once I coached, so I was like, right, I'm
okay.
going to start coaching. So that was my rowing fix, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
then and then I had the creative stuff. So, and I was loving both. And it's also very fulfilling, bringing other athletes on and being in a team environment. I love it. I really do kind of, well, obviously slightly before doing it for a very long time. But so that was kind of going on, and then unfortunately, I basically lost my voice, and I couldn't. Yeah, so I lost my voice, and I really couldn't make noises. I mean, really, it was like
Oh,
severe.
wow.
I've always, yeah. So I've always kind of, you do lose your voice. You're shouting a lot, in coaching. Sometimes you get very excited on the riverbank when they're racing and all of that sort of thing. But it had never been to the point where it hadn't come back. And there was this one year where it just didn't come back. And then I, it felt like something was swelling
Oh.
whenever I was trying to talk or if I was, trying to communicate with the athletes. So
Mhm.
I ended up going to hospital to get it checked, and they basically found a very it's actually small, but for that area, it's a very large lump. Um, so I was trying not to worry about it. Like, right, we're going to have to get you in for an operation. We're going to speed this up. And I've tried not to attach myself too much to the memories of it because it was
Right,
quite.
right, right.
But whether it was 2 weeks or whatever, or 3 weeks, and they sort of sent me in for this thing. And when I was in the pre-op, I think because I didn't want to be stressing about it because it was
Right.
already making me I was stressed because I was thinking, well, I
Yeah,
love
well, I
all
mean, that would have
that.
been scary, though.
And it was very scary. It's all these things that I love. What if I can't talk again? All these things go through your mind, don't they? You
Of
always go to the
course,
work.
of course.
Um, and then I think I was being a bit flippant in this thing, and I think I was like, yeah, like I've got someone to come and pick me up, and they're like, well, who is it? And I was like, well, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Don't worry. Um, and I think he just didn't think I was taking it seriously. To be fair, I don't think he'd think I was taking it seriously. I think I was just trying not to panic myself by
Right, right.
making it into this. But I think, and he was just sort of said, look, they're rushing you through because they think this is probably cancer. This you don't normally
Oh, wow.
get lumps this large unless it is cancer. So you need to take this seriously. And obviously, what? And then obviously then I was taking it extremely seriously from
So
that
you
moment.
swung from one to the
Yeah.
other, and you were actually faced with losing your voice in so many ways, not just your actual voice itself,
Yeah.
but the things that you had just begun to explore.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
were there any, because that's surprising enough, of course, but as you made this transition from athlete and you started embracing more of the creative pursuits or otherwise creative pursuits, um, did you have either any surprising encounters along the way or even experience some kind of internal hesitation or resistance towards this? Like, were there people you thought externally who would be in your corner and understand and simply were not supportive at all?
Absolutely. When I was when I did that acting course, towards the end of the acting course, and I think there were quite a few people who at the time in my family, for example, who they obviously want the best for me
Of
and they
course.
still want the best for me.
Okay.
But I think sometimes, and this is what I would say to anyone that's, thinking about their own lives in this situation, I think sometimes people can want the best for you, but what they think is the best for you is actually the best for them. And
Yeah.
it's not the best for you, and they are definitely trying to protect you and they want to see you thrive, and they're not doing it out of a place of bad spirit. Obviously sometimes you can, I'm sure, get people from that place, but
Mhm.
I think on the whole most people are just want the best and they think it's not possible.
Mm.
So they can just see you heading for this car crash or whatever it is,
Yeah.
but does that make sense? And they're like,
Yeah,
no,
it
this is too.
does.
But actually, I think personally for me, and what I say to some of the younger athletes that I coach as well, and I hope the parents don't think, I actually think, if you love something and you are incredibly passionate about that thing, if you go for it with your whole heart and your whole spirit, you will get there eventually.
Yeah.
You're going to
And you
probably
owe
have.
it to yourself to pursue that.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
you're driven, because you
Mhm.
love it. So, and I think otherwise, if you try and push someone into something that there's not really aligned to who they are as a person,
Yeah.
they aren't going to thrive because they don't want to be there. They don't
Exactly.
want to be that thing. So it's kind of I think it's a little bit silly, but I also understand why people do it. Does that because
Yeah.
they just what they see is right for them, and what they think you need to do to get there is completely different to maybe what you see is perfect for you or what you want your life to look like. So yeah, I absolutely have, and some family members were very instrumental of me kind of dropping the acting as a thing when I was younger. And then, I've grown out of, and what I want for my life has changed along the road. But, certainly when I was in my young 20s, I wasn't aware of this. But, I've become, I guess, a bit more aware that we all have our own perspectives,
Right.
and aware that we all have our own lenses that we see the world through. And I think
Mhm.
traveling with that as well, because, you go to all these places and what's completely normal in your own society and your culture, you
It's
go somewhere
totally different.
the opposite,
Yeah.
and it's so helpful because it really frees you, because you kind of come back and you think, well, I love that they do that over there. Why
Right.
don't we do it here?
Yeah.
Well, that's just society's conditioning, and actually, you know, that's I kind of want to like that. That sounds great to me. That's actually quite,
Exactly.
and I guess it kind of frees your mind a little. I feel like personally, I feel
Well, it
like
opens you up to options and to explore because I
Mm,
think that, again, parents and family members being well intended,
mm,
they really want you to have the ability to take care of yourself, you know.
mm,
Um, but what a child hears is often, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And is so much more about what it is you want to do next.
mm,
And so what if it's something that you grow out of, as in your
mm,
case, that
mm,
still also has a place in your journey and you got
mm,
to experience that and try something new. So,
mm.
you know,
And I think that's what life's all about, actually. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think the more amazing experiences we have,
oh yeah.
when we, if hopefully we get to, 85, 90, we're not gonna look back and be like, oh, I'm
I'm
so glad
Amazon. I'm gonna live forever.
model. Oh, I'm so glad I bought that like amazing car. You're gonna be like, wow, I remember that time that I was hitchhiking, in the
Oh
middle of
yeah.
nowhere with so and so, and I had that experience. You're going to remember the experiences, aren't you? And even,
Oh
whether
yeah.
that's planning a course or, that's you
And you
traveling
get to
somewhere.
be bold and daring and, have all these amazing experiences through life and you never know how they're going to come back. and may very well provide a solution to something that you're working on present. Without that experience, maybe you wouldn't be able to do whatever it is that you're pursuing now. But you also spend a lot of time in nature, and
Yeah.
that's one. Oh my gosh, that's close to my heart. I like to spend even more in it, but the hiking,
Me
the
too.
long walks. I call hikes long walks, but or at least that's what my family does now. But whole nother story. Um, Being that you are outdoors, I'm sure that gives you a different perspective on the world as well, like just being out in creation. Um, but how does nature, or rather, I should ask, if you believe nature influences the way that we experience creativity at all,
I
or
do.
experience our lives even?
I think, I think nature is somewhere that you can really reset and align with yourself. And I feel like it opens the door to being creative and I guess being allowed the space to have imagination and to relax, and to really reset yourself. Because I think, if many of us, I'm not saying everyone, but, when we live in these big built up areas, it's not an environment that's going to make you feel creative, I don't think, necessarily. Obviously, interactions with people might make you feel creative, or, when you're wandering down the street, if you see some street art or something like that, obviously, but
Yeah.
I think for me personally, when I'm out in nature, that's when I feel like a lot of my ideas come to me. I feel so peaceful. I feel like my brain just works a little bit better. I know
You
that sounds,
too.
yeah, I do. I feel like everything's a little bit more clear, and I also am not there's less kind of fuzz. Does that make sense? That's going on in the background. I kind of feel like very present. And I think also, I mean, your environment, even in your house. So I'm looking around right now, and I have loads of plants in my living room, in front of me, behind me, all over the place. I've got stuff in, a lot of them have grown since COVID. I bought a lot in COVID. I was like, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to buy lots of plants. But it genuinely makes me feel more creative. When I definitely feel like I can really get work done when I'm in an environment which is beautiful and also relaxing. And for me, those things come from nature, I think. So
And
I
even
don't know if
science
that's
do that too, about the ability to grounding, walking through nature with, barefooted, being out in the fresh air. We have something called forest bathing, which I think is
yeah.
interesting. When I
Yes.
was
Yeah.
growing up, it was called go outside. Um,
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
how we package stuff. Uh,
Forest bathing sounds lovely though, doesn't it? Just kind
yeah.
of nice in the
Uh,
brain.
but there's, much to be said about green spaces, not only about purifying air quality, but
Yeah.
I think it's easy to forget, especially in modern life, that we are nature also. So
Yeah.
connecting to
Yeah.
the world, the earth itself, that's what we were built to do anyway. And we've gotten so far away from that.
Which I think is a real shame,
Yeah.
personally. I think the more we can reconnect with our actual selves, and also I think it teaches us respect for other species as well, because I think when we pitch ourselves that we're above everything and we're like this different category of being, obviously then we're not, it also means that you're looking at everything else being not as important as you, when actually personally think that it is. I think the animals are just as important as us, and nature and the wild spaces that we have are just as important as us. So I think that's also part of it as well, for me anyway. But I mean, thinking about mentioning forest bathing during COVID, I started walking every day, and I was walking in the forest every single day. I got into a real habit of it, because I was like, I have to get outside somehow. I'm not allowed to mix with other people, unless they're in our bubble. It was over here, we had bubbles. So I was like, right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go walking every day, and I stick my my earpods in, maybe listen to an amazing podcast, inspiring podcast, a bit like this one, or some music, or I just sit there and just literally take in the sounds of the forest,
Yeah.
and it was so healthy and peaceful, and and I got so much from it. I wish I did it every single day now. I'm not as good, I have to be honest, because there's so much more. It's hard, isn't it? But I really wish that I could do it every day still. But and I found my creativity was just growing.
Yeah.
It was just spiraling, and it got to I mean, it was very silly. It's crazy, but I'd be walking down. I just decided that instead of just going down one path every day, I would just, whatever looked more interesting, I'd just go that way, even if it was completely off into the bush. And I'd be
You
like,
too. Okay. So that's why my family no longer takes walks with me. So yes, yes, because I'm the explorer. I'm the most adventurous one in the family. But I explore when we go for walks.
yeah,
I mean, my intention is to keep it 20 minutes. I truthful. I plan to keep it on 20 minutes, but if I see something, then okay, 2 hours. That's what it's going to take. So
it's
yeah,
almost like getting you back into play, isn't it? It's like getting you
yeah,
back. You're in the present moment instead of just being like, I'm going to walk down the same path every time. You get back into that kind of instincts and you're present. You think, oh, that looks so wonderful. And if you see or hear or
you explore.
smell something, you go in that direction, and it's,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Across some wonderful sites like ruins that we wouldn't have known were
yeah.
there. Abandoned, like um, what is it? Groups of just animals. We've seen foxes on the trail. I've had a deer with huge antlers. I kid you not. As soon as I crossed the bridge, and I don't know how something this huge could not make any sound, but I remember I crossed the bridge, and as soon as my foot was off it, I felt this gush of wind right behind me. And I looked, and then I heard it. This massive deer, which with huge antlers. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" But absolutely beautiful. So
He didn't, he was just kind of looking at you like,
yeah, must have. Thank God it was a deer. But yeah, they don't go with me anymore. But
I mean, I had a few friends that did the same thing. I was like, but this is the way. And and they're rowing friends, they're very tall. And they were like, we're in
but
the middle
there's
of I
value.
know, this is really fun,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's why we value, going off the beaten path. We value the road less traveled, but we get to experience it literally and bring back some of that at least back into our everyday lives when we leave that space. So in spite of, in relation with that, in spite of nature's obvious ecosystems and patterns,
Mm.
do you believe that nature can also be a blank canvas?
I think it is a blank canvas. I think because essentially pure nature, when it's untouched, raw nature, it's black, is a blank canvas. But I think that humans have toyed with it in many ways. But I think we've also used it as our blank canvas, haven't we? At the end of the day, we have created societies. We've used nature in every way. Everything that we own is at some point, from nature. Even, I mean, chemicals, all that sort of stuff. It is from, we can't create things that aren't there already, really, apart from maybe atoms, you know what I mean? So, but,
Yeah, I gotcha.
but, so I think it is a blank canvas and we are able to use it as a blank canvas. I wish that maybe we didn't use it as a blank canvas as much as maybe we do, but I wish we kind of just leave it as that blank canvas. But yeah.
Yeah, it provides many spaces. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like biomimicry, we draw so much from that as well. But maybe the canvas aspect of it is to be drawing what's natural, what should be natural for each one of us. Maybe making
Mhm.
that come back to the
Yeah.
surface, reemerge in some way, or just simple moments of creativity that there's no way you can experience them, or at least not experience them in that way in the built environment,
Mm.
which I believe you were touching on earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
You have so many projects underway. Oh my gosh, you have the children's books, you are training athletes, you're leading travel adventure tours, and regular exhibits around the world. Have you identified any common threads that run through your complete body of work?
Well, I realize we have talked a lot about nature. It's nature. It is nature. So, even I coach. I love being outdoors. I'm on the river all day. That's a big part of it. There's lots of reasons, but that's a big part. With the children's book, it is based on a little girl, and she basically goes on an adventure to save her friend, and the animals help her
Oh,
along the way. So yeah, that's the book that I'm working on at the moment. And then, with my art, that's always mostly as travel and nature based, but a lot of it is nature based. So,
okay.
things, because I think it's so uplifting for people. And I'm really, the other thing I would say is that I really want people to feel very positive,
Mm.
and same with the adventure tours. I want people to step outside their comfort zone and feel good
Oh,
about them, positive about themselves and their lives, and experience these things. And I think nature and, that definitely helps. So yeah, your
just a
question.
little bit. Just a little
Yeah.
bit.
So yeah,
It's nature. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's one of the things that I like love about you because, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers are picking up on this. You have, you are living such a well integrated life, well aligned. And that doesn't mean there haven't been challenges and that you still don't face challenges and at moments perhaps feel pulled between one interest or one goal or another. But
Mm,
to live in such a way um, where every day you wake up and you experience and you know that you fit within the scope of your life and to be
mm,
able to fully occupy your existence, that is such an amazing blessing and an amazing journey equally to get to that point. So I'm happy to have your insight. Being that you are obviously multi passionate and multidisciplined as well. Um, what structure or routines have
mm.
you put in place that allow you to better shape
Mm.
um, your life or maximize your day?
So I'll be honest, routine is a struggle because every day is quite different. And obviously everything's, there's so many different moving parts. So I wish I had a set routine,
But
but
you had
it's
so much of it early on, though, so this is a good transition.
exactly. So what I actually do is, and in order to make sure that I am productive and I do get through things, and I very much goal set. So I goal set. I have an idea of what I want to be doing and achieving in these different areas. So normally, I'll have. I use Notion. I use Miro. I don't know if
Mhm.
you. Your listeners have heard of these things. They're amazing tools. I'd highly recommend them. Things like Trello, and then I have different boards or pages for different things. So I've got, my rowing one, I've got my art, I've got my children's book, I've got the adventure travel and the travel organization and stuff like that. So
Okay.
everything is kind of separated. And then I have an overall one for where I'm heading myself, does that
Yeah.
make sense? So I can track everything and then where I need to move and what I need to focus on for different months or what I'm doing different week on week. And I really try and kind of plan it out like that. And I think that's very important because I think it's otherwise you get a bit lost. I would definitely get a bit lost, and I don't think I would achieve things. And I think that's actually a structure that's come in from being an athlete because I was always on a training program, and you always had these long-term, short-term, mid-term goals, and so you always knew where you needed to be, and then it was like, right, well, the training program has to come back from that. And I've kind of taken that skill and I've been like, right, this is what I want to achieve. Okay, let's take the steps backwards that are going to happen in order to make that happen. So, and sometimes it takes a bit
Carried
longer.
over then.
Yeah,
That carried over.
um, absolutely. There's so many skills, and that's what I think I love about all of it, and I'm so happy about because I feel like every skill that I learn from one thing, it all feeds in together. So it's not, you know, it's so nice because I don't know, like there's really good aspects of all of it. I definitely think, for example, I'm more creative in the way that I explain things to athletes as a result of being creative and having done acting and all this sort of stuff. And
Of
I'm
course.
probably a little bit engaging, but also, I'm more structured with my creativity because of the rowing and, and more kind of focused and various things. So there's certainly a lot to be said for not, I love the fact that I've got, such diverse things that I'm doing, because I really think they enable me to be better at the other stuff as well, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I heard two things there, and correct me if I'm if I'm wrong. Um, what I heard first was that even though you have these different schedules, there's one that guides your life. And the way I would reference that is layers, because you know what you're looking to get out from each aspect of your life. You're able to bring more of yourself to whatever it is that you're doing. And the
Definitely.
second thing that I heard, that's the project manager, the certified PMP. um, what I heard also is that structure is freeing. I think when people hear structure, they typically think of something that's going to confine them or restrict them in some kind of way. And the way that I experience that, as well as what I guide the women to see who we work with, is that structure can be viewed as parameters. Like, here's certain borders that you have. But once you know what your parameters in is, or what your boundaries are, then you're free to bounce off the wall anywhere, within that. You don't have to give any concern, but, kind of setting scope, if you will.
I think it almost can inspire you, actually,
Yeah.
because you've got a small boundary. Otherwise, there's so many options. It's overwhelming. If I looked at
Especially
all
now.
the things, oh yeah, I mean, the options for everything, whether you're,
And
the right pens or the right paints, or, you're, whatever you're doing, or even deciding whether you're going to use Trello or something else,
yeah,
everything's so huge. I actually think I completely agree with you. Having sort of a boundary box that then you can explore freely is very, very helpful and very, very freeing. And I also think, with, if I looked at, okay, I want to achieve this, I want to achieve that, okay, I want to, I want to have a children's book. Like, okay. But if you think, okay, well, what's all the stages that are going to happen? These little, like, tiny stepping stones that are going to happen in order for me to get to that moment. You break it down into these tiny, tiny chunks, and then you're like, right, okay, well, the first chunk is just, draft out, like, maybe just, mind map some ideas,
yeah,
and then, okay, I can do that. All right, well, the next chunk, so, and when you break it down into really small, tiny chunks, then your creativity really does explode. But when you're looking at it as this huge, massive project that you've got to get going, it's so big and it's so overwhelming. You just don't start. In my opinion, that's what
yeah.
I,
And
in
many
my,
people don't for that. They think they have to, launch this massive production towards even the smallest thing. And that's just simply, not the way. Um, Taking you back to nature, though, if you will. uh, it's not like we don't want to go. No, no. So when we're hiking, um,
Mhm.
it's actually a common experience to kind of lose track of time, or to eventually hit a point where time seems like it's standing still.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and you get a sense of kind of oneness, if you will, with
Mhm.
creation or just with the environment around you. Some people refer to this as flow.
Mhm.
So, what has been your experience in this area?
I get it every time when well, with a caveat. I find it easier when I'm on my own, or if I'm with friends, but we're having a moment and we're just sitting, and we're just taking it in rather than chatting. I think if you're distracted, it doesn't happen for me. But
Mm.
I feel like because you're so present, um, and you're really in touch with all your senses. So it's almost like you're being dropped into your like animal instincts, really. You're seeing, you're hearing, you notice all these things. You can feel the floor beneath your feet. What does that feel like? Okay, it's soft, whatever. You're listening to the birds, or the crickets, or whatever it is. And yeah, so you do. And I think for a brief moment, I don't know about you, but for a brief moment, I almost forget that I'm human. Or I just don't forget. I forget about myself. Maybe that's a better way of saying it.
Right.
Because I'm so present, I just am experiencing it. And so, yes, I do then feel very at one with everything around me, because I'm just in it. I don't know how else to explain it, but yes, 100%. I completely get you. And I think it's one of the best feelings in the world, actually. So everyone should go out and do it more often.
Oh, oh my
Enjoy
God.
it.
Because it's a very beautiful feeling. It's seeing yourself as part of everything rather than separate from it, rather
Yes.
than detached,
Yes.
which may actually contribute towards us even being detached from ourselves,
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
just
maybe.
disconnected.
Yeah. But in a healthy way, I think, not in a.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
It's like, no,
I
you're
think,
still here, but the experience is different.
I don't know about you, but I feel I think this is travel and nature, to do with both. And I think when I travel, I always want to be in nature mostly. So maybe that's, it's one and the same. And meeting people in different cultures as
Hmm.
well. Um, but I feel like I don't see like British people, American people. I do genuinely see one world. And I have to be, maybe this is a bit of a rookie thing, but I think the idea of borders is a little bit crazy, because I'm like, we're all
Yes, you
borders.
too.
Why can't I, you're not going to, the rabbit's not going to get in trouble from stepping over one side of this border to another. We were all animals. Like, I think it's a little bit crazy at the end of the day, that we've kind of cordoned this off, and it's us against them, or it's oh, you can't come here, or
Hmm.
and, or
Yeah, my saying on that is that God created the world and gave it to us, and man created boundaries.
yes,
You know,
yeah,
and
and boundaries we don't like.
we can, those things have come about just from historical. You don't even have to draw politics into it, um, but what we've done to separate us from one another.
Mm.
Um, and I will say this for you, um, because I believe we're like-minded on this as well. When For me, when I make the statement, um, the world is my family, humanity is my family, the earth is
Mhm.
my home.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Due to, I don't want to say bandwagons, but yes, there are plenty today. Um, due to how that's received nowadays.
Mm.
I think it's so easy to take that viewpoint and say, oh, well, that must mean this person is in denial. How can you say that? Or that must mean that this person is blind to one issue or another. And it's like, no,
Mm.
it's that I see. It doesn't mean you're blind to the issues. It doesn't mean you're blind to the
Mm.
complications or the complexity of certain situations. But
Mhm.
what it does mean is that at the end of the day,
Mm.
you are fully aware that this is our only home
Mhm.
and that we are all one and
Okay.
interconnected.
Yes.
And if you lead with that,
Yeah.
in my opinion,
Mm.
so many of these issues would simply no longer be,
I agree.
because then I really am seeking everyone's best interest, and it's not based on power dynamics, and it's not necessarily based on borders, because don't all humans want the same thing?
Yeah,
How that's
everyone.
carried out
Yeah.
can be different, but at the end of the day, I love my family as you love yours. We experience pain, we all bleed, etc. So it's not a denial or choosing to remain in willful ignorance. It's just my approach to this solution is just different.
Absolutely. And I think, I think we all at our cores, as you just said, we all want the same things. Actually, every human being around the world, really at their core, want the same things.
Mhm.
So you can connect with everyone around the world. We're not different, we
Right.
might be from different places, we're not actually different.
Yeah.
I find that whole concept very strange because it's like, well, we all feel empathy, we all feel these things, it's not,
Yeah. And it's
it's
the human
not
experience,
really
but,
scary.
and different as
I
well.
love
So,
there's a wonderful, I don't know if you've seen, there's a wonderful little short story called The Egg. And I think it's written by the same, I can't remember his name, but it's written by the same guy that wrote The Martian. Um, but he basically talks about how, you come back as every time you come back, and you come back of every single thing throughout time. And you're all just the same person, that you just come back and come back and come back. It's just a nice little story, but you learn how to be every type of person. Does that make sense?
okay.
And I just thought it was I think it's a lovely story, actually. I think it's a really lovely way of thinking
Check
about
it out.
it. Is. It's love.
Yeah.
It's lovely. And I think, I sometimes think when I go traveling and I meet people from very, very, very different backgrounds to me, I, and they're maybe in a very, disadvantaged background. And I think, well, that could have been me. That
Exactly.
me. I haven't earned my spot here. I just,
Yeah.
I don't know what I feel about souls, or in terms of like, how you become into being. But it's like, well, am I, if you did think of a soul dropping into a body, it's like mine just
Right.
dropped here in the
Yes.
UK, and I'm so fortunate, and I'm very, very, very lucky, actually, in many ways. But it
Yeah.
could just have easily dropped into a body, you know,
Exactly. Because we have no control over that whatsoever. you know
exactly.
um and that's something I think that will be present, and we'll get back on. No,
No.
this part of the conversation, but okay. But one thing, especially today, especially due to all the changes and the uncertainty that people have experienced over the past several years, um, the Bible says, true, the poor will always be with us. What it
Mm,
doesn't say, however, is that the poor will always be the same people.
yeah.
So remember to be kind.
Yeah.
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 So you had this highly regimented life in competition,
Mhm.
and now you're leading more free, wild soul life. How does flow in competition differ, if it does, between now what you're experiencing, the flow in nature?
So I think, when you're in nature, I feel very present. So in that way, it's very similar. I'd feel very present when I'm racing,
Mhm.
but when you're in nature, I personally feel very peaceful. I feel very relaxed. And I think we do, as a rule, feel very relaxed. And it's more of an in alignment with yourself at your core, in your core
Mhm.
nature, in terms of, as we've spoken about, feeling at peace, feeling like you are one with nature. When I was racing, it was about being present in the moment, but in a heightened state, in I guess, fight mode. So flight or fright. You're in fight mode. It's still in alignment with who you are, because that's a
Right.
natural of you, but it's a completely different mode. So you are present. You're in the moment. You're not thinking about, you know, I don't know. You're not letting your mind drift off. You're in that moment
Yeah,
of,
because you
right
can't afford to do that. So
now. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so so it is different, but it's also similar, because you're at the same time, you're present in both scenarios. And that's, to me, that is flow, is that state of presence. Yeah. Where you're out of your head and out of judgment and that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So have you your experience with flow, has that changed from how you first experienced it or experienced it initially to how you experience flow now? Like, are you better able to harness certain aspects of that?
I definitely think, I didn't know that flow was a thing. I think many of us aren't aware of it. Maybe kids now are aware of it. So I didn't realize that that's what I was experiencing. Um, and then I sort of learned about it in my young mid 20s, and then I was like, this is actually what I do when I'm really, like, performing well, whatever it is, whether it's in art, whether it's, when I was acting in the moment, getting into the moment in acting, or whether it was, performing, racing really well, or doing these things, those moments where it's been, when I felt like I was at the top of my game, in that moment, not in terms of everyone else, but just for me, when I was doing my best, it's when I've been in that present moment, completely out of my head, completely in flow, and just, it's all because it almost just comes. It's like that's, I guess, maybe why they say it's flow, because it flows out of you. It's like whatever it is just flowing out. You're not having to work for it. So yeah, I'd say that for me is how it's kind of been. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily different. It's just that I recognize what it was, and and now I can see that that's kind of the root. So, but yeah.
So how are you able to how can we carry that with us in any capacity? Because we are speaking about art, we're also speaking about creativity, but for people who may even lean towards a more linear slant or spend the majority of their time in business, like how can we experience that in any capacity, or do you believe that that's possible?
Absolutely. I think for me, I think that because I do think it is presence, and you being able to not be in judgment of yourself, and you're letting what you do come out without interfering almost. And I think that's quite hard. I think it is quite hard to get into that state sometimes, because we're so caught up in our own thoughts. But I think the more you can do things that enable you to get out of your thoughts, get out of your head and into the moment, into your instincts almost, then yes, you can find it in any area, whatever discipline that's in. So I think doing things like, for me, and I would recommend this to everyone, is things like meditation, doing things where I actually find things like journaling in the morning, or doing pages to get your thoughts, whatever it is, unjudgmental, just get them out. And then also things, I'm a big believer in things like gratefulness and practices and things like positive affirmations. And I do think, I've had some times where I've felt a lot of self-doubt, and I've had imposter syndrome and various things. But the way that I've kind of, I guess, like almost try and coach myself.
Yeah.
So right, okay, right, I'm aware that this is a thing. So what do I need to do? So these are the practices that I then, really dig in on in order to get my mind back into a positive, like, I can do attitude. So things like where you're writing, I would be writing 3 things that I feel grateful for in the morning, and 3 things that positive affirmations that I can do this, or whatever it is, And I do think, and they have shown in psychological studies, that over time, it might not be like the first day, you might still, but over time, you do that every day for a month and tell me that you don't feel more positive afterwards, because 100%.
And you find more things than just 3 to be grateful for.
Yeah.
So, that went pretty well too. So yeah.
And then when you miss the train, instead of being like, oh, I missed the train, you think, oh no, I can go and get coffee. I don't know. It kind of tips you into
No.
where you're like, where you're seeing the benefits of every situation rather than the catastrophes,
Yeah.
So I think I'm a big believer in that sort of stuff. And I think doing things, and it's also important, the people that you're around. So, if you're in a negative environment, or you're in a negative feedback loop, that is absolutely going to stop you from being able to get into flow 100%, in my opinion, 100%, because if someone else is being judgmental, even if it's not to you, it's other people or whatever, you are going to start being judgmental to yourself, and you are not going to be able to be present. You're not going to be able to just let things come out, because you're going to overthink absolutely everything. So that's why I also think it's very important in business, for example, that you are all very supportive, and you really are like, you've got this. This is great, and you're really everyone's biggest cheerleader, because if you can create a team culture where it's supportive and people aren't in their heads and they aren't overthinking everything, they are perform better. So it's you personally, you as a team, it's so important, I think. So
no doubt, no doubt, because you create a culture, and it's so amazing to have one where people know they can come and be and perform at their highest, and know what their scope of work is, but also, more important, they have bought into whatever the vision is, the vision for the company, vision for that project. No matter how big or small their role is, they know how they fit. They're a part of it.
Yeah. and they don't feel the sense of, that fear of failure. Like, I can't get this wrong because I'm going to get in trouble if I get something wrong. There has to be this almost space to experiment and play, even in a business setting. I would say in any situation, there has to be that almost, you're able to be a bit more creative, and people will listen, and they don't judge you for coming up with ideas outside the box, which sounds great, but you'd be surprised, how many environments don't promote this as a culture, even with the kids that I coach, quite often, if they're stuck in their heads, I'll be thinking, or that even the adults, just see it as play, guys, don't worry. I want you just to experiment, just enjoy it. This is just for fun. And then suddenly their rowing gets better. And you're like, well, of course, because they're not worried about doing something stupid and looking silly. You have to get out of that, and then they can actually perform really well. So, yeah, I think.
Yeah, I come from highly structured, work hard, play hard environments mostly all my life. So performance driven, performance oriented, definitely. And that's one of the things, but also as from when I took a hiatus in business a few years ago, some kind of way came up with writing, which was totally unexpected because being an author was nowhere on my list anywhere. But when I returned to business, bringing that creativity back, because I never thought I was creative. And so since then, I've been more freer, giving myself more margin, and I definitely see the value of it. But even this Create series, I have learned so much from the women, including yourself, that we've had the honor of interviewing, about how easily they deconstruct, they literally toss, break down to make something better, or just walk away from projects that don't serve them or that they know are not going to turn out, and they don't carry it with them. They don't see it as a loss. They either rework the materials if that's what they're working with, or they just chalk it up. Well, if this one wasn't work out, and go on to another. And that's something that, of course, there are different implications or ramifications with that outcome in business, especially the larger that you've scaled to. But the principle of being able to experiment, incorporate flexibility, to leave margin for error, that's something that we definitely can apply and would benefit us if we embraced.
Definitely, 100%.
How do you, and I have, I have doors in my office. I have soundproof doors.
That's amazing.
When my doors are closed, that don't not.
It's brilliant.
I don't even want you to walk by, honestly. But no, you don't. You don't knock. But likewise, when we're experiencing those moments of flow, because you're in a different state, and you can get so much from that, and there's a lot that's going on that you yourself are not driving, which is another part of being in flow. You're not driving the experience. You're not necessarily in charge of the experience. You are aware of what you're experiencing. Is there any way we can avoid or respond to interruptions when we're in that state?
So, well, I think it's getting, I'm sure everyone can relate to this. I think it's getting so hard to avoid distractions now.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I think so for me, in terms of actually creating an environment where I'm not going to get distracted, I actually turn off. So I will do things like I will turn my phone onto flight mode. I think it's on flight mode right now. Or silent. It's always on silent, no matter what. I don't have notifications come up on computer. I don't have a smartwatch. I will not. Because I don't think it benefits me. I think it's so easy to get distracted anyway, let alone if something's constantly tinging me and I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrible, in my opinion. I really don't. I think that's not a good thing for mental health. Actually, I think it's creating people that are a little bit more ADHD almost, because
I can see that.
Yeah, so I would do things like that. I also, I will I put on some like very relaxing music. I've got some beautiful lighting in here, and I have lots, obviously I spoke about this, having lots of plants. I have a really nice environment where I work, and that helps me relax. So when I've not got those things going on and I don't have all these distractions in the moment, these things help me. I might even sometimes I put on, some essential oils, and I have a particular combination that makes me feel like, okay, this is work mode. um, you know, um, and then things like that. And I also sometimes, if I really need to, I actually in 2020 I actually saw a naturopath for to optimize my health, and I started researching quite a lot as well about nootropics and various things too, and like things that would help you, almost biohack yourself. So I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
people, you may think, oh, but
No.
I found
Nature.
that things like there are certain natural herbs or supplements that help me concentrate and focus. So if I know that I've got to have a very focused day and I want to get loads done, then I might have a little bit of L-theanine and lemon balm, or a little bit of lion's mane, or
Okay.
I don't take them all at once, but there are certain things. There's also Rhodelia and Bacopimonary, I think, or
Oh,
Rhodiola and
okay.
I'm not saying the names. But they, these things are all, and I do find they really help me focus actually, because I don't know. Obviously, I don't know why, but they do. Even if it's a placebo, I'm down. Any whatever. Hit me with it. That's okay. But if I do get distracted, if something happens and I do get distracted, then I make sure I write down my list. So I note down what I need to go back to straight afterwards. So that then as soon as that distraction's gone and I can end that and I can put that down, then I can go back to what I was doing and get back into the mode, even if that's writing down like exactly where I left off. So, if I
Gotcha.
was writing, for example, then, where was my brain going? And then I'll go and answer the door, or, answer the phone, and, whatever. So those sort of things. I know I touched on that, but even things like, I think sometimes even leaving your phone in another room really helps me,
Mm-hmm.
because even though it's on flight mode, if I have a moment where my mind wanders and I'm like, oh, I'll just check my emails, and it's like, no, then it's like half an hour. Like, oh, and then something pops up and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to check Instagram. It's terrible. So no. So it's like, the more, if I really need to get some stuff done, put it in another room, and then I don't even get tempted. And I personally think that's one of the best ways, because otherwise, and set times to check your emails. Don't
Yeah.
try not to do it in the morning and last thing at night, because also you're not going to go to sleep if you suddenly get an email that you need to answer, and stuff like that, which I'm terrible for. And I do this, but when I've got lots to get done, I really hone in on these things. So I'm not perfect. I don't do this all the time. Sometimes I completely do the opposite and I'm terrible and I'm very distracted.
Yeah, but at least you
You
set the
know,
environment for it.
Really, but I do, when I know that I need to get stuff done, like I really think, okay, right, I'm going to start doing these things. This needs to go in that room. I need to sit down. I need to have a clear desk. Things that aren't distracting me all around. If same living room is messy, or
Gotcha.
the workspace is messy, no way. I'm not going to get stuff done. So yeah, so that's what I would.
That's
I hope
helpful.
that's helpful.
That's helpful. Yeah, because I mean, so much goes into you can create the environment, so that's awesome. What is if there was one thing you wish people knew um, about living a life of creativity, what would that be?
I was trying to think about this because, and I think business skills are really essential for people. And I don't think I realized this young enough. And I had to start developing my business skills and learning new things. But I think the earlier you can do that, the better. But I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to be this creative. And also I think people that aren't creative see creatives as, it's not a real job. Like you don't do, or,
My
whatever. But
perception, it is.
but actually, creatives and all the creatives I know are very, the successful ones have had to really hone in on their business skills. And you don't just have to, you're not just doing one job. I'd say creativity is maybe 40%. I'm being creative 40% of the time, and 60% of the time I'm having to do admin. I'm having to set proposal or like pitch things or do, try and figure out SEO for my website, doing stuff. So, or for marketing things, you're kind of looking at stuff all the time and learning stuff, new skills, because things are changing the way that, the internet, everything's having to change all the time. You have to keep up. So
yeah.
I actually think people don't necessarily realize that. And maybe when they start out, they think, oh, I'll just create loads and loads and loads of work and then it will go well. But actually,
if you build it, they will come.
Yeah. And also like things like project management, stuff like that. All these skills, they're, it's actually, just going to put out there, guys, if you hire a creative and they're doing this stuff, you get a full package,
Yes.
So I don't know, but yeah. So that would be my one thing for people if they're
the business skills.
Get in there with the business skills now. Start learning as soon as you can. Yeah.
What's next on the agenda for you? Not like this isn't enough, but what's next?
At the moment, at the moment I'm obviously writing this children's book, so I want to get that done. I need to do some illustrations for that as well, so that's kind of on the agenda. And then I'm also at the moment building a portfolio of travel photography, which is stuff from my adventure, which I haven't really shown. And it's because I've come up with a creative eye, like it's kind of fine art. So I'm kind of building that. And then also I'm looking at doing pattern design as well. So I'm kind of building illustration things. And yeah, so that's kind of on the agenda at the moment for me. So that's probably going to keep me occupied for quite a substantial part of this year. So yeah, and then hopefully some more travel tours that I'm going to be leading, adventure travel tours, potentially in Costa Rica later in the year, but we'll see. So yeah, it's kind of these are the things on the agenda.
Awesome. May have to take you up on one of your travel tours as well.
I'd love you to. I'd love you to come on the adventure with me. That'd be amazing.
So, how can our viewers and listeners follow along with your journey? Where can they reach you?
So you can find me at this-wild-soul.com. And you can obviously join up to my email list so I can keep you updated. And there's also, you can follow along my art journey is on Instagram at thiswild.soul. And there's This Wild Soul Alice on Pinterest. So feel free to kind of have a look, and feel free to drop me an email if you've got a question as well, if I can help you in some way. Yeah.
Last question. What does creativity mean to you?
So creativity to me means play. So in its purest form, it is play. And, when you're in a playful mode, it's just coming out in flow, as we spoke about. So I think, if you don't feel like you're creative, then maybe it's just that you haven't let your inner child out for a while. And I'm sure it's just in there waiting for its moment. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. Alice, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your insights and your journey.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful. So honestly, I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.
And to you, our viewers and listeners, we hope you have tremendously enjoyed today's segment as well. We hope that you've maybe even accept the invitation to get outside, to get in nature, to give it another chance, and to see how it piques your creativity too, how it draws something out of you that maybe has been dormant for quite some time, but has just as much value and meaning to you today. So we look forward to your feedback, as we do with any segment on this one or our Complete Create series. Once again, I am Chris Vaughn, and this is In Her Company.